All right then. Yep, ready when you are.
Hi, welcome to Blueyology, where Bluey geeks geek about Bluey. If you're a Bluey geek and you've always wanted to hear some Bluey geeks geek about Bluey, then congratulations, you found us. My name's Alistair McIver. I'm joined by fellow Blueyologist Laura Guthrie. And before I
Hello.
start, hello. Before I start, the usual disclaimer is that we can't promise that everything we say is going to be suitable for all the family because we have very little idea of what we're going to say. So there may be strong language and mature themes, but we can promise that any mature themes will not be dealt with in a mature fashion.
Yes.
So I'm going to start with some episode reviews. How about we start with Daddy Robot? What did you make of this one, Laura?
I actually found that one really enjoyable and really quite intriguing as well in some ways. I think I would actually give that one 5 out of 5 stars. How about you?
Yeah, me too. It's a 5-star episode, definitely. It's in this episode, the children don't want to tidy up their mess, so they get Daddy Robot to do it. They startle Bandit while he's raiding the fridge and tell him to be Daddy Robot, and he starts embodying this character who is a robot. And boop, 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 boop.
They don't even tell them to be it, I think, do they? They just launch right in.
Yeah, Daddy Robot.
Yeah.
They try to make Daddy Robot tidy their mess, which is fine, but then they ask him to make sure that they never have to tidy up their mess ever again, which Daddy Robot responds to by throwing the children in the bin, because that's machine logic. And I like the way it kind of taps into kind of classic science fiction themes here, with the robots processing logic in a particular way. So I've been ordered to calculate the objective of the children never have to tidy up their mess ever again. The children are the ones who make the mess, therefore I will dispose of the children, which he does by putting them in the bin rather than zapping them with a big laser zapper, which is what a classic science fiction robot would do. But there is that kind of thing where you have to be very, very careful and precise with machine logic, because otherwise you might accidentally order your robot to destroy you by a particular interpretation. And Bandit embodies the robot so well. He's a brilliant daddy robot.
He's a friendly robot too, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Because he manages to do something very slightly threatening while being completely friendly and well-intentioned seeming, which is like, it's another thing of like, it goes against some traditions of robots being ordered around.
Well, Bingo giggles and says, "I love daddy robots," and that was just my favorite bit.
Yeah.
Bingo is just completely engaged with the character and absolutely loves it, even as Daddy Robot is taking her outside to the Peely bin. Then Daddy Robot badly malfunctions and is introduced to Mummy Robot. I think
Mummy Robot tells them to get the spray, doesn't she?
Yeah. They have to
and they spray him.
They have to spray him in the face with what I presume is just water, and they have to press his nose to deactivate him. And I think Chili really comes into her own here when she's opening up the daddy robot and trying to repair him. And she says these circuits are badly damaged. She just plays it so concretely. She just plays it so completely straight. And I think that's the first time you see Chili really engaging with the game and getting into it on Bandit's level.
I was thinking it's a big contrast with Keepy Uppy, a previous one.
Yeah. Yeah, well, in that one, the Keep You Up a game was Kelly's idea, but she wasn't able to engage
Hmm.
fully with it because she was busy with other
Yeah,
stuff.
which is
Um,
fair enough. But it's kind of nice to see what she's like in the other capacity too.
yeah, and this one she didn't initiate play, but she did join in, and
Mm.
she joined in very, very well. And um, and we see Daddy Robot and Mummy Robot flirting, and I think this is the first
That
real.
was the bit I was fascinated by.
It's the first real glimpse we get of Bandit and Chili's relationship, isn't it?
Yeah, and it like puts something in there that you don't see a lot in that kind of program in family sort of units like that.
So you've
Like I
got
remember seeing it once in Pingu, for example, but like parent dynamics, but like parents having this sort of side to their relationship as well.
well, you've got a kind of intersection of the children's world and the grown-ups world, and the children are aware
Mm,
of Mummy Robot and Daddy Robot, but the grown-ups are aware of a further dynamic that the children aren't aware of. So it's a very
yeah,
multi-layered thing. And there's real sparks flying between Mummy Robot and Daddy Robot. I mean,
yeah,
I think this is the first glimpse you have of just how much Bandit and Chili adore each other.
yeah.
Um, and the ending of this one was reference to the classic sci-fi film Total Recall.
Was
If this is a dream,
I didn't recognise that.
if
I
this is
don't
a
know that
dream,
one.
kiss me quick before I wake up. Yeah,
Ah, yeah.
that's from the original Total Recall film with Arnold Schwarzenegger from way back in the day. I'm probably showing my age by recognizing that reference. Um,
What? Sorry, go on.
and there's a lot of science fiction going on here. There's a lot of the robot learning to be more human or more canine, as the case may
Yeah,
be, and uh, experiencing love for the first time, and all of that kind of cliched uh, stuff. But it kind of works because it ties into a tradition of robots in the world of science fiction.
yeah. I guess it also like within the episode, just in a self-contained way, is like it kind of like Bingo going, I love Daddy Robot, like sort of actually almost portends that aspect of the whole thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
I'm probably looking too far into it like that, but yeah, it's the sort of that theme
Oh,
of sort of
you
like
can't look
robot
too far
logic
into it.
versus organic logic.
Yeah, and at the end, I have never relaxed before, and you know,
Ah, yeah.
brand new experiences for the artificial life form. Uh,
Mhm.
when I was in sixth year at school, I wrote a dissertation comparing uh, things with robots in them or artificial entities in them and comparing them. And I did Frankenstein and an Asimov novel and another one. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
and uh,
Which Asimov novel?
Caves of Steel.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. I've read the Foundation trilogy.
Um, so yeah, I was quite fascinated by the way in which robots become more human uh, as their story progresses in science fiction. Um, and of course, real robots don't do that. They just pick stuff up.
Well, they're trying to get them to do it now. Did you see they came out with this chip that's supposed to be able to sort of modify its own learning?
Yeah, I've seen things like that. I don't think that artificial intelligence will ever achieve sentience because I don't think that uh, sentience is something that belongs to things that aren't uh, really alive. I don't think
Mm.
that human beings can create life. I think that
Would we ever know if we actually had either
well,
on to that level of subtlety, I suppose, because would
that's
we
something that
recognize
just
them?
that's something that's always troubled me, because if we do create something that intrinsically has rights,
Mm,
then we won't know that it has rights, and we will also be, because human beings are basically shits, we will try to bury the fact that it has rights, because that's not a very convenient thing to acknowledge. It's never a convenient thing to acknowledge that that something or someone else has any rights. That's why humans have
mm,
been so reluctant to do it over
mhm.
over the course of history, and then slowly over time we've started like
Yeah.
being forced to grant rights to people outside the bubble of the privileged, um,
Yeah.
but we don't
I mean,
really like
in terms of
expanding that
animals and
bubble.
stuff, it's also been about having to depend on them to do work that they might not necessarily want to, which would probably also speak to robots.
Yeah, yeah, and and in science fiction, the robots very often respond to that by getting pissed off with it and overthrowing the world of the humans,
Yeah.
uh,
Well,
which is
that was what was interesting about. It was interesting about Bandit's take on robots sort of overthrowing, because he kind of did sort of overthrow them in trying to put them in the wheelie bin, but he didn't do it by like turning against them. He did it by sort of almost like malicious compliance.
yes, yes, and do you know what? Fairies do that as well. If you don't word your wish very, very carefully, then you
What
get
do they?
your.
Sorry, I didn't catch that
Sorry,
word.
fairies do that as well. If you
Yeah,
don't,
yeah, yeah.
or wish granting magical creatures in fantasy, which I think are maybe equivalent in some ways to robots in science fiction. The wish
Yeah,
granter.
although they're also kind
will-
of tapping into the notion of humans as having wishes that are kind of inconsiderate of the whole and stuff as well. It's almost like they do it as retribution to humans, teach them a lesson that way, a moral lesson.
Hmm, the wish granter will find a way to grant the wish that
Yeah,
completely screws the wisher.
for having the wish. Yeah.
Yeah,
um, so yeah, I mean, I hadn't really thought of that, but yeah, I mean, people do sort of. I have heard the argument that alien abductions are now the sort of new abducted to the fairyland type thing. So I guess there's a continuity of theme there.
there are a lot of things in common between the two types of myths. So I don't
Mm,
know if there's a particular experience that some people have that is
mm,
interpreted in terms of the stories that they've been absorbing. Um, and yeah, there's a weird connectedness between different stories from the different genres. I like the part at
mm.
the end where Daddy Robot's eyes slowly open into the sunset,
Yeah,
and it was just very simple but very effective.
there's something very that was very sci-fi actually in a way. Now you mentioned sci-fi because it's like that new alien landscape for a moment until you realize what was happening.
Mm. So that there's definitely a lot of uh, science fiction going on in this episode. It was
Yeah.
clearly written by a sci-fi buff, uh, and I like that. I like that a lot.
Yes. Yeah. To get somebody in to do that, people who are in different sort of areas of enthusiasm like that to write is good.
And of course, when they kiss at the end, the children go, "Woo!"
Yeah,
Because that's what children
instead
do
of
when they
going
see.
ah or something or just
Yeah,
leaving it out altogether, I'm glad they didn't leave things like that out.
yeah. So the children are kind of reacting to exposure to the adult world in a very childish way. Um, so yeah, I think this isn't one of the episodes that really struck me as being like in the top 10. But actually, once you look at it a little deeper, it's a bit of a masterpiece.
Yeah, yeah. Can I tell you one other thing that I thought was quite funny about it was,
Yeah.
so up until now, it's sort of been imaginative play as a way of bonding, and now it's almost using a flip side of it. It's like, look, sort of malicious imaginative play to try and get them to do, let's use this idea of games and get him to do our work for us, and so having that along with this sort of, oh well, be careful what you wish for type thing was just another whole very refreshing angle on that's has already been established so far for episode 4 of it.
Well, grown-ups do that, and I do it. I do it myself, and I feel very cheap when I do it, but I still do it. Brushing your teeth will give you superpowers, and and things like that. You need to recharge your superpowers with your toothbrush, and that sort of thing. So you kind of bring in the game to manipulate the other person into doing what you want them to do, which is of course what the kids do to Bandit. And Bandit
For once, it's the kids doing it to the adults. I
yeah,
mean,
the
well,
kids are
not for
doing it to
once
the adults.
actually. Maybe that's not fair to say for once, but like, to have an episode of that's quite fun.
But Bandit, of course, never had any intention of letting them away with it.
No.
So the only question is, how is he going to turn the tables on the kids? So there is that real
And Chili
life.
immediately picked up on that too.
There's a real life conflict kind of going on in the background as a kind of underlayer to the Daddy Robot plot, and the real life conflict is who's going to tidy the room.
Yeah, and there's no thing that they solve it without bringing in what a lot of people would sort of, I don't know, a lot of people would call for a discipline thing, like clear it up, right? All right, well, I'm going to count to 3 and stuff. There wasn't any of that. They still got the same thing done though, and the same thing resulted there.
No, and there wasn't the voice from the sky, and that's how Bingo and Bandit learned to tidy up their own mess instead of getting a robot to do it. There wasn't any of that. That's just left for you to work out if you want to work it out.
If I'm not careful,
kind of
I'm gonna jump onto the next episode on that subject.
Yeah. Shall we move on to Shadowlands?
If you're ready, if you're happy to, I'm ready to.
Okay. What did you make of Shadowlands?
I thought it was an interesting one. I'd probably give it 4 out of 5. Because I think it made a very interesting game, and it was kind of quite fun to see. This was one where it wasn't between the children and the adults. It was more between the children. And then there was the whole question about rules as well, which, that was why I was saying about the voice coming out the sky. There's a little bit of that there as well. I mean, do you want to summarize the episode, or do you want me to do it?
In Shadowlands, a group of children play a game where they're only allowed to stay on the shadows, because anywhere where the light falls is water with crocodiles in it. And there's no escape from the crocodiles. They will eat you and they don't fall asleep. So there's no way around it. You have to stick to the shadows. And the challenge they give themselves is to make it to the picnic that's going on under a tree where the grown-ups have cupcakes, whilst only stepping on the shadows. Mm-hmm. And in this one, I talked a little bit about, in the first episode, about Bingo and Bluey's differing play ethics. Here we have differing play ethics between Bluey and Coco. This episode introduces 2 new characters, Coco and Snickers. Coco is a poodle and Snickers is a sausage dog. And Bluey is very, very, very committed to the rules of the game. You cannot change the rules. You have to stick to it, and you have to stay in the shadows if you want to get to the cupcakes.
Or Blue will physically, actually, at one point she grabs Coco, I think, to stop her from breaking the rules.
Coco is determined to march on and say, right, I'm a What is it she says that she is again? Water boatman.
Something boat, yeah, water boatman.
A water boatman. I think that's a little beetle that skates across the surface of.
Oh yes, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. So she said, "I'm a water boatman. I'm going to walk on water and just march straight on and get the cupcakes." And Blue's like, "No!" and grabs her. And what we have here is a conflict between not just the play ethics. I mean, I think
Mhm.
most people in real life would say, "You know what? Can we just pause the game and go and get a cupcake?"
Yeah, they
Um,
said I'm not playing. That's what we always said.
I'm not playing. Yeah,
Yeah. Or stop the game. Yeah, like,
yeah, I'm not playing. Is the nice one. The other one is you're not playing.
oh
It's
yes,
like,
yeah,
yeah,
that's the
it's my
excluding one.
game. I am the ultimate authority on this game. It is my game. Um, but Bluey gets really, really distressed, and Coco says, "But why? Why do we have to follow the rules?" And Bluey says, "I don't know." But it's really important to Bluey that they stick to the rules of the game. And the conflict here
Yeah.
is, in a sense, between a physical reward, the cupcake,
Mhm. Mhm.
and a spiritual concept, which is the way you conduct yourself, your behavior. Uh, it's
And a
it
challenge as well.
Yeah, so to Bluey, what's at stake is nothing less than her soul. You know, it profits a dog nothing to gain the world but lose her soul. But for a
Mm.
cupcake, so we have this great existential conflict, but Bluey can't quite put into words why it is that the rules of the game are so important. And Coco's like, um, oh, at one point they make a bigger shadow. Coco goes on Bluey's shoulders,
And
or is it
jumps
the other way around?
so that
One
Snickers
of
can get over because his
Yeah,
legs are too
because
short
Snickers.
to jump.
Yeah, so in a sense, Snickers is disabled and uh,
Mm.
needs uh, needs society to adapt itself uh, to his needs, and the other children adapt the world to his needs quite effortlessly.
Rather than break the rules in that game,
Yeah, yeah. Um,
which is interesting too. Actually, now I think of it.
because Snickers has very, very, very short legs, so he can't jump the
Mm.
same distance as the other dogs.
Yeah, that is interesting because now you sort of mention that they could have by kind of real sort of non-game, probably a lot of adult standards. If an adult had intervened, an adult dog, an adult human, they could well have said something like, "Oh well, he's got short legs. You have to make an exception for him in the game. Um,
Hmm.
Otherwise, you're not being fair." But they found a way to figure it out while following the rules of the game as well.
And what do you think of Coco's conclusion when they finally do manage to run across? Because the Deus Ex Machina arrives in the form of a cloud, which extends the shadow, so they
oh yeah,
make
it
a
is
run
that,
for
isn't it?
it. What do you make of Coco's conclusion that the rules are there to make it more fun?
I like that it's Coco who draws that conclusion after having like railed against them. So she sort of says like why and things, and Bluey doesn't know, and then it's Coco who tells Bluey who's been much more rigorous about following the rules. Um, I liked it as a conclusion to that particular thing. I think the episode could have done more with, like more with the different aspects to weigh up with like that, because sometimes rules in a game as opposed to in real life probably are fun because you kind of almost come to kind of float with breaking them or stretching them. Like for example, I think a lot of children in that situation, certainly in our peer group, we played games like that, but then we would have probably found a tiny baby crocodile and nursed it, and like it would become our friend, and then we would ride it across and things like that, which would still kind
Yeah.
of be within the rules, but it would also be breaking their implications. So I felt like as a conclusion, it did what the episode was wanting to do and say. I felt like, I would like to see the other side of that as well in other episodes. And the other thing is, I did feel it was a little bit like that voice from the sky that you mentioned before, sort of, and that's how Bluey and Coco learned that rules can be fun.
And Coco takes on the role of the voice in the sky, having been arguing
Yeah.
against it for on the start. Yeah, I think it could have benefited from letting us work that out without Coco
Hmm.
saying it out loud. And I also think that there wasn't very much by way of ambiguity. Um,
Yeah.
Bluey was absolutely right and Coco was absolutely wrong, and that's all there is to it. So there wasn't the sense of, but what if there hadn't been a convenient cloud that came along at the last minute and uh,
Yeah.
um, allowed them to get their cupcakes?
Adult tower to
And
make a
adult,
bridge.
yeah. Or could they like have used their own shadows as kind of stepping stones? Uh, I
I
don't think
wonder
that
if
would
they
have
could have.
worked because they'd have been going off in completely the wrong direction. So they would have to kind of lean over to make the shadow be in the right place for the next person to jump onto the shadow. But then you would have to get out of the shadow in order to make the next shadow. Actually, I don't think that would work at
Yeah.
all.
I'm trying to I'm trying to think this out and think I can't actually picture it in my mind and think it through. I think I'm gonna have to ask someone to try it.
Yeah. This calls for direct experimentation, definitely.
Well,
I play.
that's actually a point though, isn't it? Because maybe it left those things out for a reason as
Mm.
well.
Well, I play a game with. You can do all sorts of things with shadows. I play a game with my daughter where my shadow tries to eat my her shadow because my shadow is a
Oh
lot
yeah.
bigger. So I just try and position myself so that my shadow has subsumed hers and say, "Ha ha ha! Your shadow's been eating," and then she'll jump out and make her shadow go. And it's like great. It's great fun. Um,
Yeah.
I think that they have a different perspective on what's the time, Mr. Wolf. My daughter used to
Yeah.
call
Oh
that
yes, I'd forgotten
Tammy
about
Wolf,
that.
Tammy Wolf, and that was adorable. But for me, the whole point was always to get up as close as you can to the wolf before the shout dinner time. Whereas
Yeah.
in this episode, that's presented as kind of bad form, and you should say dinner time in plenty of time to let them run away. So it's interesting that they've got kind of different perspectives on what's the time, Mr. Wolf, than I do. Um,
I wondered whether it was sort of maybe that's another example though of Bluey maybe not thinking as flexibly about things like that
hmm,
because she's sort of saying like you always make us go right up close, but actually Coco doesn't. She's just telling them how many steps to take, and Bluey could quite easily have taken smaller steps earlier on,
yeah,
for example.
you take the tiniest steps you possibly can,
Yeah,
and you can kind of tell when they're about to out dinner time because the body tenses and they're so there's a bit of warning where you can kind of take a step back before they turn
yeah.
around. I once made a child cry. I didn't mean to, but I was playing What's the Time, Mr. Wolf, and I kind of overdid it. And they were up close to me and they said, "What's the time, Mr. Wolf?" And I, dinner time! That was an important life lesson for me.
Probably for the child as well.
Rein it back a little bit. Yeah, don't fuck with the wolf. I think it's a lesson.
My the minister at our church tells a story of having played Herod in a nativity play one time, and having just sort of this toddler was passing by, and just like the minister ad lib just going like that to the toddler, and the toddler just like burst into tears and ran away, and he said it couldn't have been more appropriate.
Yeah. Um,
Like that's an interesting question in its own though, isn't it? Like, because we could be a load of people who subscribe to the traumatized for life, it's not worth it type thing, or we could be the sort of people who subscribe to the sort of some scares are the type of things they will tell us a funny story and laugh over for years, and therefore we don't want to completely childproof everything. We don't want to intentionally go around scaring them to tears like that, but if it happens sometimes as an accident,
mm,
like I think it's not something that it's not something you have to fatalistically accept either as trauma for years or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not deeply ashamed of it or anything. It just happened, and I'm sure that the child has made a full recovery and
Yeah, or
can
getting
go
very good
ahead and
therapy
lead a
sessions at
very
least.
nearly normal life.
Yeah. Good therapist anyway. Help them through that.
So, what I was going to do for the kind of discussion section of this episode was bingo questions. And bingo is in the endearing habit of asking kind of childlike questions from a position of complete innocence, but they're questions that always bring the adult up short. And she usually asks them when the adult is in the middle of doing something else. So I thought we could maybe have a go at like answering some bingo questions and maybe coming up with some bingo style questions of our own. I thought
Okay.
that could be quite fun. So, actual bingo questions. Where do rocks come from?
Well, when the Earth's core and a couple of minerals are very much in love. ... Rock, rock, rock. How's that?
That's a good one. I was gonna say that they are the feces of a lava monster. So both good
Okay.
explanations. Yeah,
Totally different
yeah.
types of
It it
explanations.
it eats children and shits rocks. Good night.
Yeah. I like that one better, I think.
Um, is everything in the whole world made of atoms?
No, thoughts aren't made of atoms.
Are thoughts things?
That's a bingo question too.
That is, isn't it? Are thoughts things? Yeah. I think the question only really works if we um think of things as
Yeah,
matter,
yeah,
because energy isn't made of atoms and neither are abstract concepts like
yeah, true.
thoughts and love and
Maybe we have to answer
God.
it in the spirit of it, how it was asked, I suppose.
Yeah. But yeah, thoughts are not made of atoms.
But everything in the world that's a thing in the more sort of grounded sense. No, I still say no because electricity isn't
Hmm.
atoms, it's electrons.
Well, electricity is
Lightning isn't.
I don't have a very good science background, but electricity is electrons kind of moving between atoms, so it's a kind of dance of electrons.
It's sort of like atoms on a prison, electrons on a prison break when it's lightning.
Yeah, and obviously, the correct answer is that atoms are not made of atoms.
No, yeah, I was
So,
trying to avoid
uh,
that one.
no, I just went for it.
Fair enough.
I think that's how you stump that question.
Don't the quantum physicists tell their children that everything in the world is made of string?
String theory, yeah, I don't really understand string theory at all, but it's a theory involving string.
It seems more like it's a concept rather than an actual description of something as some substance. Like it's saying that whatever everything's made up of behaves like string, I think.
Yeah, yeah, in some ways. Um,
Next
if
one.
if babies grow into grown-ups and only grown-ups have babies, who had the first baby?
That's which came first, the chicken and the egg in bingo speak,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's basically the mammal equivalent of the chicken and the egg, isn't it?
Yeah. I kind of have my own answer to this, but which is that in the beginning the chicken and the egg were the same. Like in the beginning there was the chicken, and the chicken was in the egg, and the chicken was the egg. You know,
Yeah,
the thing of Bible
I think
language.
I saw your post about that. It's a false dichotomy because they were in fact one and the same. I don't think that really applies to the grown-ups and babies question though. So I think that's a
Well, they were
more
both amoeba
tricky.
at one point.
Sorry?
Like you don't get a grown up and a baby amoeba.
That's true. So the first baby and the first grown-up were in fact an amoeba. And the amoeba split into two cells, both of which were both babies and grown-ups. And then it kind of went from there.
And got gradually more uneven. Like the grown up amoeba started to produce less and less grown up ones.
Hmm.
Possibly. Like well, then
Oh,
by then it was a multicellular thing, I suppose.
I think we'd probably have to ask an amoeba that question. Um,
Have you got one that you can ask to guest?
well, there's only one way to contact an amoeba, and that's on a cell phone.
Ah.
Why are some plants food, like lettuce, but other plants aren't food?
Because, well, stinging nettles have better fighting skills than lettuce.
Well, you can actually make nettle tea and
Oh yeah, I mean it's just more of I say it's just more
nettle
of a
stew.
fight, I suppose.
Yeah.
Um, Probably because they take the least work to make not poisonous.
Oh, I think some plants defend themselves by being poisonous, but other plants
Yeah.
don't mind being eaten
Some
because
want to be eaten, don't they?
yeah, well, brambles and apples get their seeds spread by bird shit, so they're actually like deliberately make themselves attractive. Come on, eat me. I'm juicy. Um, but the part of the plant that kind of grows and develops is underground and really uh, roots. So a lettuce has roots that aren't really affected by being eaten, so it doesn't mind being eaten. So I think the question is, how much does a plant actually mind being eaten?
I
Or
guess
bits of
that
it being eaten?
matters to that's difficult though, because like why would a why would a turnip make its root so tasty if it didn't want to be eaten?
Yeah, that's weird because you do get root vegetables, potatoes and carrots and such like that actually want their roots to be eaten, and that
But
seems
that
to
involves
me,
killing the plant because you have to pull it up,
yeah, that seems to me a bit of a design flaw.
and you have to do it before they go to seed as well.
Hmm,
I think, don't you?
yeah. Well, I think that if I were a vegetable, I would probably mind being eaten.
Yeah, I think I probably would as well. But I think as well if I had a if I kind of would accept that this is inevitable.
True, true. So you have to kind of prioritize your life goals. So, so maybe going to university is more important to you than not being eaten. Uh,
Yeah, I think it would be more a case of managing my expectations and then deciding what I want to do within them. Like
yeah,
if I'm a carrot who goes through life expecting not to be eaten, I'm probably gonna waste a lot of time. But if I manage my expectation of being eaten, I'm probably going to plan my life a little bit with that expectation. Just like I don't plan on
yeah,
being immortal.
yes, yes. So you have to. So humans have to work the inevitability of death into their general outlook on life.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and there's really nothing you can do about it in the end. So
Mhm.
you have to either accept it or not accept it. But death doesn't really mind if you accept it or not. So I think that's the same is true of carrots. You have to say, okay, someday I'm going to be eaten.
Yeah.
I might be eaten by a human or I might be eaten by a rabbit. But that's just what happens to carrots, and be kind of philosophical about it.
I thought you said beef philosophical. I was like, where does beef come into it? We're talking about plants.
No, I don't
But
think
yeah,
carrots are beef philosophical.
no, different kind of, a whole different kettle of fish, which is a whole different
Well, a
animal.
whole different kettle of cows.
Yeah, that's a whole different kettle. Full stop.
Yeah, I mean, you could get fish in a kettle, though why you would want to, I'm not sure. But I don't think you could get a cow in a kettle. Unless you
No.
like built a large kettle for a cow to go in.
Yeah, it'd have to be on its side as well, I think, or else have the spout. Like. Yeah,
There
I guess
was a
that's a teapot more, isn't it?
there was a children's TV program, and I can't remember what it was called, but everybody lived in teapots. The houses were built to look like teapots.
I don't know that one.
Okay, I'm almost certain I didn't imagine it, but I can't remember what it was called or any of the details. So I'll have to try and find that.
It does remind me a bit of the shoe people. That was
Shoop
fun.
de shoop de shoop,
Shoe
people doopy
people.
doopy doopy. They used to have
Do-do-do-do-do.
chocolate shoe people that they sold in ice cream vans, and that was one of my favorite things to buy with 10 pence. If ice cream vans sold everything back then, I don't
Yeah,
know if they still do, but ice cream vans were kind of like mobile shops, and I would
I
be
think they
sent
still
out
do.
to
Yeah.
I would be sent out to get messages from an ice cream van,
Mm.
and I would say, "Can I spend 10 pence?" So 10 pence of the change was mine to do with as I would, and in those days, 10 pence was some serious buying power. And one of the things I could get for 10 pence was a little shoe person. Um, yeah, there was somebody called
Okay.
Margot, I think, who was kind of lacy shoe, who was very posh.
Yeah, that does actually ring a bell. I mean, I think we had a tape of them and cassette
Mm.
tape of stories of them. I remember the policeman one, and there was one called Charlie, I think, as well.
And there was an army boot as well.
And I sort of sorry about the word here, tramp boot, because that's what they called us, I think. Charlie Tramp, I think.
Okay, I'm going to need to remind myself of that because it's a kind of half it's a half-eaten memory in my brain somewhere,
Yeah.
but it's there. It's definitely there. So my personal favorite bingo question of all time. This is the ultimate bingo question. I love this one.
Okay.
How do animals without tails know when they're happy?
Oh, that's a really good one.
It's a beauty, isn't it?
Yeah. Such a doggish question.
It is. And if you watch, it's a question that comes in a later episode, but it makes you want to go back and watch all the other episodes to see what they're doing with their tails. And
Yeah.
throughout the show, the dog's tails are very, very, very expressive.
Oh well, actually, remember in the Shadowlands episode, when they first hear about the cupcakes and Bluey goes kind of cupcakes like that, and that's the one time I said it's sort of very doggish there too.
Yeah. So how do animals without tails know when they're happy?
Difficult question because I would say ears for some of them, like horses,
Mm.
as opposed to or like, but but then we don't. Most of us don't have very expressive ears, and those of us who can move them, there's
Uh,
only a limited amount of options, and we don't have tails either, and a lot of us aren't very happy.
yeah, I can move my ears a tiny amount, but I
And
wouldn't say that.
let's see, show them, show everyone.
Okay, okay. See, okay.
Oh,
I believe that that's moving.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I didn't know that I was actually moving my ears. I just kind of hear a purring, a ring noise in my ear, and I thought of it in my own mind as making my ears purr. Um, um, and it was only many years later that I did it in a mirror, and I realized that I was actually twitching them slightly. It's a very small movement. It's like a millimeter or so.
I mean,
Um,
I can move my ears. I just have to go like this, but I don't think
yeah.
that really
Or like
counts.
this. Yeah, that works too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that is technically, but it's not. what
I
most
can
people would
I can
mean when
roll
they
my
say it.
glasses with one finger like that. That's
Yeah, so you can use your glasses for that.
one of
So
the
do you know
perks of
you're
wearing
happy?
glasses.
If you're happy and you know it, what do you
Clap
do?
your hands. Well, Dave Gorman did a bit about that, and he said that one of the kind of plot holes of that song is that you can't be happy and not know it. And I completely disagree with him. I think you can be happy and not know it. In fact, sometimes I find, and I don't know if this is a common experience, but I find that when I'm happy but I don't know it, as soon as I notice that I'm happy, it's gone. You know, so I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's a bit
oh,
like
I'm
music, isn't
happy.
it?
Oh shit, I noticed that I'm happy. No, I'm not.
Yeah, I think that's a very adult thing though, actually, in some
Yeah, you kind
ways.
of have to be unaware of it for it to work. It's a totally weird state of mind to be in. I mean, maybe I'm just nuts, but
I remember knowing I was happy when I was little though, and sort of finding it a lot easier to look at it, and I sort of wonder whether that, so us adults aren't as good as children at making friends in some ways.
you know,
And I sort of sometimes wonder whether that's like we don't just sort of go and go, oh, like with my mum with her friend, oh, you've got short hair and I've got short hair, and they've been best friends ever since. You
yeah.
know, um,
Well, Isabel's best friend is called Isabella, and I think that they kind of maybe bonded over similar names. Um, but dogs' tails do wag when they're happy, and I don't know if they can fake that. We can fake a smile to some
mhm.
extent, but different people are not as good at it. So sometimes you can spot a fake smile. So it's
There's an easy way to spot a fake smile.
yeah, what's that?
You tell the person to whistle immediately. If it's fake, they'll be able to.
So
If
like,
it's not fake, they won't be able to because you just
so
can't. You can't.
do you like stop smiling and then whistle, or do you smile and whistle at the same time?
If you're fake smiling, you can stop smiling enough to get your mouth into a whistle position. But if you're real smiling, it's really tough to.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that I suppose that's a test to do, but
I
I
don't know.
don't know if you.
Is it polite to randomly ask people to whistle to see if their smile is real or not? You know, if you're
Well,
on a
yeah, you just don't tell them that you're doing it, and then they won't know what you're testing for.
so if you're on a
If you're
date and
testing and they don't know it, make them whistle.
if you're on a date and the other person seems to be enjoying your company because they seem to be smiling, then you just say, "Oh, could you whistle for me?"
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, not rolling you back. You couldn't whistle.
Yeah, I
That's
suppose
assuming
it,
they
it
can
has its
whistle in the first
flaws,
place.
but then most things have their place to use usefully, don't they?
It's a very, very interesting theory about smiling and whistling. No, I've never heard that one before. That's very
That's because I
interesting.
just made it up. Now try and whistle. Now try and whistle.
Brilliant. Okay, so on that note, I think that we'll call it a day. Thank you very much for blueologizing with me.
Thank
And
you, and thank you to anyone who's tuned in.
yeah, and I'll
Everyone who's tuned in. Let's be positive.
see you next time. And with any luck, David will be with us next time.
Yeah, yeah. Take care. Have a good
Bye
week.
bye.
Bye.